My grandfather's 5 basic principles of being a good deer hunter are number 1 is be familiar with your map and compass so there's no fear of getting lost. Number 2 is learn how to pre-qualify the woods before you ever go into them so you're not hunting in an area where there's no big bucks to begin with. Number 3 is learn how to walk in the woods under all conditions so you can walk up close enough to a deer to get a shot at him and not jump him at 250 to 300 yards and never even hear him, never mind see him. Number 4 is learn how to react to that buck when you jump him, whether he sees you first or not, so you can put yourself in a position to get a shot at him, if not immediately within the next half hour to an hour and a half. And number 5 is learn how to shoot fast and with rapid fire and hit what you aim at. Them are my grandfather's 5 basic principles of being a good deer hunter.
What's going on, everybody? We're at Huntstock. So you guys need to come with us. If you've been to other local shows or outdoor shows, this is nothing like girls. This is like a giant deer camp. A bunch of like-minded people. They're enthusiastic and excited about what they do.
We had a great time here at Huntstock. This is an awesome event. What do you think, guys?
One of the best shows that I've ever been to, really. More deer hunters here than there is anywhere.
I think this is one of the greatest shows right now in the hunting world. There's no question.
Down here at Huntstock 2023, had a great time. Better than expected, better than the year before, and I think it's growing, and next year will be even better.
I gotta admit, this has been one of the most largest, best shows I've ever been to. It's like a giant deer camp. The feeling that comes with this place has just been absolutely awesome. This is something you're not gonna want to miss in the future. The value of coming to this show is so phenomenal. That $40 buys you non-stop, almost can't get to them all seminars from some of the best people in the industry in the Northeast.
Huntstock is it. This is the premier show on the Northeast. Everybody is at this show, telling stories, showing things off, and waiting for you guys to show up. Come on out. We'll be waiting for you here next year.
Well, today I sit down with Randy Flannery at the Great American Outdoor Show. We did this podcast right after I sat in on one of his seminars. He does seminars all over the country for Field and Stream and the NRA. And he delivers one of the best seminars I've ever sat into. He's engaging. He keeps you engaged the entire time. And he's just got a lot of knowledge passed down through 6 generations of hunting in his family. And they all have been hunting in northern Maine by the art of tracking and stalking, aka still hunting. So when there's no snow, they focus on still hunting, and they're really good at that. When there is snow, there's no better way for them to kill deer. He gets into the reasons how they started tracking and why, having to do with providing meat to the logging camps and things like that up there. But Randy's just got a wealth of knowledge, and he's a tremendous guy. So this is one of my favorite podcasts I've done. It's a lot of great knowledge in it, and hopefully you're engaged the entire time. Without further ado, let's get into this podcast now. Here he is, Randy Flannery. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast. Sitting here with Randy
Flannery.
Flannery, it's been a great to get to know you over the last few years. I just sat in on your seminar. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Did a great job at breaking down still hunting, what you call stalking, right?
Yep.
Is there a difference? Still
No.
hunting and stalking?
No.
So
there really isn't. No.
And tracking, and just the way that you come at it from different angles. We were talking Joe Donito. Uses a bolt action.
Yep.
Scoped rifle. He likes to be up high on the ridges.
Yep.
Stays away from water.
Yep.
You're hunting down in the dirty.
Yep.
Down in the wet. You like the water, and you don't like scoped rifles. Why don't you talk a little bit about why that is?
Well, the biggest problem with when you're hunting thick country like we are, it's fast shooting, and it's quick, and it's thick, and most people can't find it in the scope as it's moving through the woods, and if they do, they throw a Hail Mary shot at it and miss, and then they try to work the bolt fast enough for the second shot, and by that time they do that, the deer's gone. My family's hunted with 16-inch barrel iron-sighted Winchester lever guns for 6 generations because of that reason. It's fast shooting.
And why don't we, you talked about your grandfather a lot in the seminar.
Yeah.
Was he the guy that really taught you? Like he was the most hands-on with you? Or talk a little bit about your grandfather, what he meant to you.
My grandfather was, I wouldn't be a guide, I wouldn't be an outfitter, I wouldn't be a jump shooter, if you will. That's what the old-timers call trackers and stalkers, jump shooters. Jump shooters. That's, he's a jump shooter, because pretty much that's what we do. We either track them down and jump them up and kill them, or we stalk through the woods and jump them up and kill them. So, it's fast shooting. So, my grandfather literally was a deer slaying machine. And my uncles and cousins, it was all handed down. He learned from his father, and it's all handed down.
And the sixth generation, was that your grandfather's father or your grandfather's grandfather?
My grandfather's grandfather.
Okay. So what do you know about him?
He was a character. he was a character. Matter of fact, he used to work. And my grandfather did it too when he was young too. But my great grandfather, he used to work providing meat for the logging camps. So
just killing deer?
Deer, bear, moose. They learn how to go after the biggest in the gene pool, you know? So, yeah, that's what they did.
Yeah, well, and for anybody that's listening that doesn't come from the Northeast or doesn't know much about the tracking culture, I mean, it is all about the weight and the bigger the animal, but that goes all the way back to because it was all about the meat and providing meat for the family, right?
That's a great point, and let me tell you something. What most people don't realize is back in the day, back in like my great-grandfather's day, you could take your kill, your bear, deer, moose to the logging camps, and they would weigh it. And the heavier it was, the more they paid you, and they would buy it off you to feed the loggers. So that's a big reason where the whole weight thing comes from.
And that was before market hunting got outlawed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you, out of all the years that you've been, and where do you live in Maine? And tell people about your outfitting business. But
we own Wilderness Escape Outfitters. We're on Upper Hot Brook Lake, right on the Washington Aroostook County line, just west of Danforth, Maine, East Grand Lake, just west of Danforth. We do bear, deer, moose, bobcat, snowshoe hare. We fish a dozen lakes, 5 rivers, a lot of trout brooks,
And how many square miles did you say that you lease up there?
Over 500.
Over 500, and there was 8 property owners?
6.
6? So are they, is it paper company?
Timber and paper, yeah.
Let's talk about the differences because that Joe DeNito podcast was so popular, right? And
well, Joe's a good man.
He's an awesome guy.
And I met Joe through my dear friend Jim Massett. And I've been dear friends with Jim for a long time, and it's impossible not to love Jim Massett. It's impossible.
He's amazing. I did a podcast with him too, right before DeNito there.
Well, Joe's a great guy, and so's Steve, and so's Dave. I mean, they're great guys. I did a seminar in the Adirondacks last year, and Jim and Dave came to it, and a few of their friends, and it was just a treat, getting to hang out with them guys. Anytime I get to see them, it's a good thing. They're wonderful people.
Oh, yeah. And so the Adirondacks where they're hunting, it's a little bit different than the northern Maine woods, hence the different tactics, right?
Yeah.
So what's
I think the
like?
same tactics work, the same, but you have to adapt to the terrain as well as the conditions. You know what I'm saying? The Adirondacks, you got millions of acres of open country.
An old growth timber that's never been
cut. Where Maine is just the opposite. Most of the deer I've killed in my lifetime are less than 50 yards, and it's fast shooting.
Yeah.
But that's how Maine is. In the Adirondacks, it's kind of like hunting Pennsylvania to some degree. You got them open timbers. There's places you can see a couple 100 yards in the woods. I wouldn't know how to act.
Speaking of not knowing how to act, you were going out on a hunt one time. I think you were in your teens, and what'd your grandfather say to you?
Well, I was walking out of the yard, and you know, I had my 30-30 Winchester by the end of the barrel over my shoulder, and, you know, I'm walking out of the yard, and my grandfather said to me, I was probably 14, 15. He always called me lad. He goes, hey, lad, where you going? I said, I'm going deer hunting. And he said, what? And I could tell, Pat, I could tell by the tone of his voice he didn't like what I had to say. So he said, what did you say to me? He goes, get over here. So I walked over to him. I said, yeah, Grandpa. He goes, what did you say to me? I said I'm going deer hunting. He says, yeah, that's what I thought you said. He goes, you ever say that to me again, I'll hit you so hard you'll starve to death bouncing. He was a character. He says, you better set your mind and set it now, or go back in the house and watch TV like the rest of the kids. He says, you're going to kill a deer. You better set your mind and set it now, or you're just going to be taking your gun for a walk like everybody else. He said, don't you ever say that to me again. You know, he always said the key word with tracking and stalking is you got to be relentless. You got to make up your mind right then and there before you enter the woods that you're going to either kill that buck or you're going to run out of daylight trying.
Yep.
And if you don't expect to kill a deer every time you go in the woods, you're taking your gun for a walk.
That was great advice, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. That's one of many, many things he's told me that was great advice, believe me.
Lanny Benoit told me that when he's mentoring somebody or taking them on a hunt, and he really, you know, right before they'll find a track and before he sends them out on it, he'll tell them to go out and you need to put it in your mind, pretend that the only way you're surviving tonight is if you get food, you know.
Yep.
Go out there and you have to bring the meat back to survive, and if you get that into your mind, like you're saying, it's all the mindset.
It's a mindset. The difference between successful people and those who aren't successful is the way they think. And, you know, Lanny is as good as they get, and he's a dear friend. He's a great guy. I know all the Benoits. You know, I knew Larry and of course Lane. God bless them both. And Shane and Lanny, of course, and Landon's a good kid too. You know, you know, they've proven it time and time again. You know, and what I tell people all the time in my seminars is the difference between the way my family hunts, as well as the Benoit family and the Bernier family and the Donito family and the Massett family and the Spraker family, and you know, the difference between the way our families hunt and how most people hunt is we hunt the way their great-grandfather hunted. We hunt the way their father before them hunted. You know, they couldn't afford to sit and wait for a deer to come to them. They had to put food on the table to feed their family. Mm-hmm. So they had to go after them. They couldn't afford to wait for them to come to them. They had to go after them. So that's pretty much what you do, tracking and stalking.
And another thing, you know, that reminds me of the Benoit family and your family from your seminar is that the game wardens couldn't believe that,
right.
You know, you were the amount of bucks that you were killing, the caliber of bucks that you guys were killing,
that was
and
in
that
Pennsylvania.
You were doing it
Yep.
consistently.
Yep.
They thought that you had to be doing something wrong,
Yeah.
so they followed you around, and that happened to the Benoits too. What happened with that story?
Well, that, you know, I invited them to go with me. I got to a point where I had to literally swap my vehicles with friends of mine who lived out there, and once they realized that I wasn't shooting them out of the window of the truck at night, or I wasn't breaking the law, once they realized we're doing a pot.
It's all right. It's all right. No worries.
So
that's gonna happen.
once they realize, we become friends, and you know, they come to my place, you know. But that's how it is, you know. I mean, you know, people think that if you're having that kind of success, you know, that they got to be doing something wrong, and it's not true. It's like it's like anything else. It's like honing your skills, you know. And I'm no better than anybody, you know what I mean. But it's a passion. It's a passion, you know, and you know, you got to like what you do. And if people like to sit in tree stands, God bless them, you know, good for them if that's what they like to do. It just ain't for me.
Yeah.
You know. Just ain't for me.
Talk about where you're going. Your ideal place to go and find deer tracks. What do the woods look like in your ideal place? The haunts, as you call it.
Well, where you have water, food, and cover in the same area, you're going to find deer. And most of them times, them deer, unlike when there's no snow on the ground. When there's no snow on the ground, most of the tracks you see are coming down off the hardwood ridges and going into the lowlands in the morning. Okay? Many, many times when there's snow on the ground, it's the total opposite. They're coming out of the lowlands, out of the greens, and they're going up into the hardwoods, even in the morning.
Yep.
So, I like a piece of woods, a piece of high ground that is parallel by a brook on both sides. Tough to beat. And I've shot a lot of deer in cedar swamps as well, and along brooks, beaver flowages, saddles, up high, stuff like that.
Let's talk a little bit about what was when there's not snow and you are just still hunting and stalking through the woods. You had some great stuff in the seminar.
Thank you.
Heel to toe walking and crunching. Can you walk through a couple of really important things for people to keep in mind if you don't have the snow conditions, but you still want to get out there and hunt and you want to be effective in a big wood scenario? How are you approaching stalking?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, there's nothing I'd rather do than track a buck in the snow. Nothing. However, you don't always have good tracking conditions. So I'm not going to sit in a diner drinking coffee waiting for the snow to fly. Not only that, I can't do that anyways with my business. So you got to adapt to the conditions. Now, with that said, when I'm stalking, I hardly ever have the wind in my face.
Yeah.
I hardly ever. Because what happens is when the wind is in your face and you're stalking through the woods, if you jump a buck, he's going to run 75 to 175, 250, maybe 275 yards at the most. And he's going to swing to the downwind side, which is behind you, and before too long, he's going to be standing behind you watching you walk away from him. So when people would ask my grandfather, how do you keep killing these big bucks all the time? He always said, when the ground is soft from sun, rain, or snow, track, because you can see a track. If not, then cross-cut the wind and stalk. So that's pretty much what we do. We cross the wind because if you cross the wind, you know which way they're going. They're going downwind.
They're always going to go downwind to check on you.
Yeah, they may not start out
Yeah.
on downwind.
Yeah, go away.
Yep, they may not start out downwind, but they're eventually going to swing downwind because they want to smell you.
And then you said, at that point, if they're going downwind, you know they're going to be going downwind after you jump them most of the time.
Yep.
So you take a 45-degree angle?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Pat. I jump them out of their bed, and if I can shoot them right then and there, I'm giving it to them.
How many are you giving it to them?
I'm sending 5 of them as fast as I can send them.
Yeah.
As fast as I can send them.
Yeah.
Again, make sure your target, safety first. But once that deer jumps up in front of me, I'm sending 5 of them as fast as I can send them. There's too much country for them to get, to suffer and die in. You know what I mean? So I keep shooting until the animal's on the ground.
There's probably not too many deer that you've shot that you didn't recover, if any.
I've never not recovered a deer.
What do you tell the guy?
Well, a lot of times people say, and I hear they'll say that about the Benoits and the Berniers and the Massets and the Sprakers, and besides saying talking to us, they'll say, yeah, all you trackers, you shoot a lot of deer, but you wound a lot too. And my response always to them is, if we can shoot them before they're bleeding, if we can track them before they're bleeding, I reckon we can track them after they're bleeding. You know what I mean? It's like, people just don't think, It's just how it is.
And your grandfather had something, too, that he said to you, something about you better not have a bullet left in your...
Yeah, my grandfather always said when we were young and he was teaching us, he used to say, if I ever hear you shoot, I'm going to get a compass reading on you. And when I get to you, if the animal's still on his feet, if you have any bullets left in your gun, we're going to have to go to the hospital to get my foot dug out of your hind end. Like I said, he was a character.
With when you're if you got crunchy conditions, what's your strategy on crunchy conditions to avoid a deer being able to detect that, oh, that's a human, versus you want to try to sound like a deer, right?
Yeah. Matter of fact, one time me and Pop and Dick Bernie were hunting together, and I walked up on a buck, and there was 6-8 inches of crusty snow, and it took me literally 3.5 hours to go 300-400 yards, and I walked up on this. I heard this buck, but I was trying to sound like a deer. So you got the crust under your feet, so when you step and you fall through the crust and you make a noise.
Yep.
So then I'll take 2 steps. You know, the crust breaks, you hear tsh, and then you take 2 quick steps, tsh, tsh, and then, you know, you constantly, and you're going slow, and you're constantly trying to sound like a deer. Well, anyways, I shot at this buck and with a muzzle loader, and it ain't no such thing as a good single shot, period. So you know, that I'm quoting my grandfather. So anyways, I shot at this buck with the muzzle loader, and just the cap went off. He started trotting away. I whacked a call, one of Will Primos's hands-free calls. I had it on dog grunt. I whacked it again, twice. And the buck stopped, put the clamps right on, and turned and looked at me, and I had changed the cap. And anyways, just the cap went off again the second time, so I give the gun a fling and got a compass reading for the road and headed out to the road. And when I met with Pop and Dick out on the road, they wanted to know where my gun was. I said, where it belongs. And Pop, you know, They asked me what happened, and I told them, and Pop asked me to show him. I said, "You want to waste that time?" He goes, "I do. I want you to show me what happened."
Pop, you mean Larry Benoit, right?
No, I mean
different
Pop Bernier.
Okay, Pop Bernier.
Dick Bernier, his father.
All right. Yep.
So I took him out there. He was watching how I was walking. I took him over to where the deer was, where I shot at the deer, where the deer stopped. And we started walking. I said, okay, let's go. We wasted enough time, you know. And I turned to walk out to the woods, and Pop put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, your grandfather would be proud of you. He goes, I know of only a handful of people that could have done what you did today. Which, you know what, I appreciate it. Not that I'm looking for anybody's praise, but, you know, the bottom line is, no matter what the conditions are, if it's noisy, you got to sound like a deer. If you expect to walk up on a deer, you better sound like one, you know. So that's
because you don't want to sound like a human trying to be quiet.
No, because that's exactly right. Because
that's foreign to them.
That deer will jump up 250, 300 yards ahead of you, and you'll never even see him. Never mind, you'll never even hear him. Never mind see him. So, yeah, you got to, you know, as you saw in my seminar, pictures of deer we walked up on in noisy conditions. Most people don't think you can do that, but you can do that. You know, you really can.
What have you found when it comes to the time of the season, early season versus mid-season, late season? How are the deer behaving differently, and how do your tactics change?
There's people in here and everything.
Well, my tactics change more than anything, you know, under weather conditions, and they have to. Like earlier in the season, a lot of times you get warmer weather. All right, deer are thermal controlled, whether the rut's going on or not. Deer are thermal controlled. So when the temperature gets above 42 degrees, they're on their bellies. You know, and you gotta kick them up to get them moving. So, you know, you gotta understand that. And the rut changes it. Although, you know, I also am a big believer, just like Joe Donito, again, you know, just a great guy. And, you know, Jimmy Massett told me, he goes, you know, Joe thinks the same way you do. I said, what's that? He goes, Joe would rather get on the track in the recovery phase than any part of the rut. I got absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to go as far. They're semi wore out from rutting, and that buck that you might have to track for 3-4 miles earlier in the season, either during the seeking or chasing phase, later in the season when he's wore out, you may catch up to that buck within a mile. There's a good chance that you're going to catch up to that buck within a mile.
So let me ask you this. In your seminar, you were talking about how aging tracks is important, and if it's over 4 hours old, most of the time you're not going to take it. But in that late season, chances are he didn't move as far because he just wants to bed down.
Right.
Do you sometimes take an older track then?
Absolutely do I take an old track. Absolutely. Without question. Now, especially if it's a buck that I cut his track earlier in the season,
yeah,
or the year before,
yeah,
absolutely will I take an old track. No doubt whatsoever. But initially, I'm looking for a fresh track.
Yeah. Now, why do you say if you've tracked him, especially if you've tracked him before this year or the year before, then you'll take it?
Well,
why does it make you want to take it more? Just because you want to settle the score, or because you know a little bit about that deer?
Yeah, you will never learn more about deer and deer behavior than you will by tracking them, without question. And my grandfather used to say, "Let me get on the same buck's track a second time, and he's in big trouble. Let me get on the same buck's track a third time, he's as good as dead." And you learn their swing. And another thing is, like I said, deer. You want to learn about deer and deer behavior. Learn how to track, because you're going to learn more than that. You're doing that than anything else.
Now, are you identifying and remembering year over year an individual buck's track? Like, how would you know going back a year later that that's just where he's at and you recognize the track, or how are you doing that?
Well, that's a good question.
Maybe it's just the behavior, and you're like, oh, I remember a buck that acted like this last year.
If I pass on a buck track, and decide to go look for another one,
yep,
I'll mark it on the map, the date, and exactly where I passed on that buck track. And I'd be foolish not to go back in there to look and see if I can pick up that buck track again, because if the next year he's going to be more mature. The next year he's going to be much more of a buck. So absolutely, I'm going to go check him out and see if I can get on him.
And another awesome thing from your seminar that I'd never heard anybody else talk about, and I've heard a lot of the seminars, running Huntstock and stuff, I'm hearing a lot, but I never heard the other way that you were identifying the buck's track throughout the whole day. Why don't you tell people about that?
You mean the stick?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because, Dick Bernier and I used to do a deer tracking school at our place. And years ago, it was me, Dick, and Pop.
Yep.
Very nice.
Well, what happened was when my son Scott was like 15 years old, Dick and Pop, I had to give my guides their duties. They had come back to the lodge. It was during baiting season. I wanted to make sure everything was going smooth. So I bugged out for a couple hours to make sure everything was going smooth. And Dick and Pop were covering, how to decipher their track that they're following to the rest of them. And they're looking for a point, and, a chip on the hoof, or one part of the hoof shorter than the other. And my son Scott, 15 years old at the time, Scott says, well, my family uses a stick. And Dick and Pop looked at Scott like, what? And he explained it to them that what we do when we're going to take a track is we'll cut a stick the exact width of the track and put it in our pocket. So later on the track, if he gets into what we call a barnyard, where there's all kinds of tracks everywhere, you check every buck track leaving that barnyard, I never go in the barnyard. I skirt it, on the high side if possible. If there is no high side, on the downwind side. And I check every buck track
That's leaving.
that's leaving it.
Yeah.
And, you can accomplish, I'll kneel right down and set that stick right in the track. And, you can accomplish finding that track in 15, 20 minutes, half hour, what could take you 3, 4, 5 hours in the naked eye, just by using that stick. Pop and Dick were blown away by that from a 15-year-old kid, and they used that tactic for the rest of their lives. It's just
it's something super simple, and anybody can grab a stick. And
Exactly.
It's one of those little things that I just love about doing this podcast and listening to seminars and different seminars is you can pick up just little things from each person that you can add to your repertoire.
Absolutely. And I've always told my kids, you can learn something from an 80-year-old man with a busload of knowledge, or you can learn something from an 8-year-old kid that may have heard something from an 80-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old Japanese proverb, steal with your eyes, steal with your ears. You learn more with your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut. I get around people that I know are good trackers, good hunters, good woodsmen, like a Jimmy Massett, like a Joe Donito, like a Dick Bernier, God rest his soul, or Abby Spraker, or, I get around people like that. I have so much respect for them guys that, of course I want to hear what they have to say. If every day you got to want to learn something. You want to learn every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
And that's how you know you have the bug when you're doing that.
No question. And not only that, people have told me over the years doing seminars that I pass out too much information. I give too much information out. And you know what? I don't believe in that at all. If I can help somebody, what's God want us to do? Help our fellow man. You know what I mean? If I can help somebody out, I'll be more than happy to do it. I get phone calls all the time from people that either sat in on one of my seminars or came up on a learn to track and stalk hunt. Hey Randy, I did exactly what you told me to do, and I killed the buck of a lifetime. You're not going to believe it. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. And I get calls like that all the time, and it's a wonderful thing.
That makes it so rewarding.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'd rather guide a kid for nothing than get paid to guide a grown-up. I love taking kids out. I really do.
And how many lifelong friends and just great people do you meet through this industry? It's incredible. I mean, I've only really been in the industry, I guess, for a few years with the podcast and stuff, and the amount of lifelong friends I feel like I've already met.
That's exactly right. And, you got that common bond. You got that common bond. We all love the woods. And, when someone becomes a good woodsman, they have my respect. Not that I'm anybody special. They need my respect, but they have my respect. And if someone gets into tracking and stalking, you got to be a good woodsman for that. And, of course, they have my respect. And I think if you talked about all the people that have success tracking and stalking, I don't know all of them, not by a long shot, but I know the people that I know, I think would do anything to help one another out. I know I would.
Yep.
If I got a call from any one of them,
oh yeah,
I'd go help them.
It's so fun to help people drag deer out,
I'd do whatever. It's like I told you in my seminar. Dick Bernier called me the last day of the season one time that he found he cut the biggest buck track he's ever taken. You seen that track? That was huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, I need your help. He says, I'm not going to be able to go back in there hunting until next year. I need your help. Can you give me a couple days? And I went over there and with him, and I found the track. Where'd I find it? Coming out of a cedar swamp. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He went up high, I went down low. I cut the track, you know, and I couldn't stay there. I had a lodge full of hunters,
Yeah.
you know. I you know, and I would have loved to. We tracked it for a day, ran out of daylight before we caught up to it. And he never did kill that buck.
I was gonna say nobody got that one, huh?
Nope.
You thought he's 400 pounds on live weight?
I would say, you know,
Close, pushing it?
Yeah, in the 400-pound range live weight.
That's a monster.
Oh my God! Well, you seen the track?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like a horse. It was
Yeah.
not only extremely wide, but
Yeah.
long.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Speaking of being a good woodsman and recognizing that in people, what is it? Part of being a good woodsman is you got to be prepared and you got to have your essentials on you. And what are the essentials that you, if you're gonna go tracking in any big woods scenario where the roads are few and far between, what are the things you have to have on you?
Well, that's a great question, Pat. And that was the essentials were once taught to every family living remote in the country, and like tracking and stalking and trapping and woodsmanship skills. A lot of these they die with the people that die. They're not passed on. But I don't care what you're doing. If you're going afield, I don't care if you're going camping. I used to guide in Colorado and Texas. I don't care where you go, especially in the woods, but no matter where you go. We have a farm down in North Carolina. If I'm going horseback riding, the farm's bordered on two sides by thousands of acres of North Carolina state game lands and state forest lands. I got the essentials with me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And what they are is, the essentials are what you should never, ever go into the field without, ever. And they are 3 compasses. Why 3 compasses? Because if you carry 2 compasses and one breaks, which one's right? By having 3, you always have 2 to compare. 3 fire starters, be it flint and steel, wooden matches soaked in paraffin wax, a windproof, waterproof lighter. You should always have 3 fire starters.
3 different kinds of fire starters,
yes.
too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you should always have a good knife, a good flashlight, extra batteries, a topo map of the area you're going into. Them are the essentials you should never enter the woods without. I dress light because I never stop. Okay? So I dress light whenever I'm in the woods, especially tracking and stalking. All right? And besides the essentials, I carry my gun, my cartridge belt, my drag rope, and I may have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a bottle of water with me, and I have a space blanket in case I got to spend a night in the woods. That's it. And you've seen some of the pictures of me in my seminar with some of the bucks I've taken. I'm dressed pretty light.
Yeah.
No matter how cold it is, because I'm on the road.
Yeah.
I'm on the move. It's just like Scott. You've seen several pictures of Scott with bucks he's killed, my son Scott. And if you think about it, see how lightly he was dressed, because you're on the move. Got to be on the move.
Have you ever spent a night in the woods? Getting tangled up?
No, not on a deer track.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. No. I know people who have. The old timers before they were cutting in roads everywhere. The old timers, they did follow a buck track until they run out of daylight and they'd sleep right there.
Camp out there on purpose. Yeah.
They camp right out there on purpose.
Yep.
Start after them the next day.
What are your signs to slow down on a buck when you're on a buck track?
Well, any sign, knowing when to go fast and when to go slow is imperative. It's very important. If they stop to feed, if they stop to scrape, if they stop to make rubs, if they stop to nip browse, they're telling you that they slow down. They want to lay down. If they go up and down, like if they go up a small hill or even a big hill and then they go back down, then they go up and they go zigzagging and they walk over to a pile of jack fur, they'll walk over to a blowdown, or they'll walk over to another blowdown, or a pile of rocks. They're telling you they're looking to lay down.
Yeah.
And you know, they're gonna make a J hook, usually to the high side, and they're gonna lay down to check their back trail and chew their cud. That's what they're gonna do.
Why do they do that J hook?
So they can check their back trail. Bears will do the same thing. The bears will do the same thing.
But they want to get a vantage point to see it.
Exactly.
They don't just lay down in their trail. That's why they
No,
go. So
although-
the J hook sometimes they're going up higher a little bit. Or
Yeah, they'll
most
go
of
up.
the time?
They'll go up. They'll go up onto a rise to J hook and check their back trail. That's what they're doing. They're going to sit there and chew their cud and checking their back trail.
Now, how many bucks have you killed? If you can remember them, in their beds that were on that J hook. Like where you knew that they're probably going to be J hooked up here, the downwind side.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm going to break off the track and try to come in behind them when I see they started to J hook. I've shot a lot of deer that I either jumped them out of their bed or I've even shot a few deer where they stood up out of their bed and kind of like humped up their back, stretching.
Yeah.
I've shot them that way.
While doing that?
Yeah, while doing that,
Now, you said you get your mounts done the way that your deer died. You got any doing their stretching?
No.
That would be a cool mount.
No, it would be a cool mount. No, I usually have my deer mounted, like how I shot them, although on them I didn't, but usually looking around, looking over to where I jumped them first, or straight on, checking their back trail. I usually mount them the way I kill them.
Yeah, I one thing I really liked in your seminar, there were a lot of things, but when you were portraying after you jump the deer up, and they're going to run away and then do that hook 100, 150 yards away from that trail, looking, downwind, in the downwind side, looking that way.
Yep.
I just liked, you were really just how you're engaging with the crowd, and you did a great job of keeping everybody engaged and focused on that.
Thank you.
And it's one of those things I'm going to think next time I jump a deer. I'm immediately going to think, all right, which way is the wind going? Okay, he's going that way, and you said you run through the woods after you jump, right?
Absolutely.
You get to that spot and then you kneel down.
I drop the one. I take a deep breath to slow my heart rate. I drop the one knee and I'll sit there for 20 minutes, half hour, and the reason why I try to engage the audience as much as I can is I want them to get it.
Yeah.
I literally want them to get it. I want them to have success. And it works.
Yeah. Well, there were some guys talking to me after too that were like, I cannot wait. One guy actually somehow, he's like, I found your podcast a couple months ago, and I've been a bow hunter my entire life, and here I am listening to a podcast. The name is Hunt Suburbia, but I do interview a lot of big woods hunters.
Sure.
He goes, you got me I'm done bow hunting, and he literally came to this show just so he could see you. He was here just for the tracking seminars.
It's
he was
humbling.
sitting in there because of that.
It's humbling. Not last year in Kansas City, but the year before in Kansas City, doing seminars at the Field and Stream show in Kansas City. One of the guys for Field and Stream came up to me and brought a couple to my booth that drove up from southern Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about humbling. They said that they had been following me. They've been reading about me in the, Field and Stream and the other magazines for years.
Mm-hmm.
And they always wanted to see one of my seminars. And when they found out I was speaking in Kansas City, that's very humbling. It's because I'm nobody special. You know what I mean? It's very humbling when people go out of the way to come up to a show to see your seminar. It really is. It's very humbling.
Oh, and make sure if you guys are watching this, you want to see a seminar, you got to go to any show where he's. Do you have a website that shows what shows you're going to be at or anything?
I think Field and Stream does. But
Okay.
My sister Mary Beth helps me out, and she does a lot of posting on where I'm going to be speaking and stuff like that, because I can't keep track of it all. She even does a lot of the scheduling for me. You know, and my wife's so busy. She's always working hard, you know, at our business and businesses, I should say. And so, you know, my sister Mary Beth will list some of my seminars as I'm doing them, you know.
Yeah. You got to make sure you go and catch one of Randy's seminars for sure. I mean, it was I've seen a lot of seminars over the last 3 years specifically, and it's the top and right up there. Joe DeNito's one is so engaging, and yours is the same type of engagement in a little bit different style.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so cool because you pick up things, you know, different things from Joe and different things from you, and depending on where you hunt, you just start to piece together your formula.
Yeah, I've sat in on Joe's seminar, and he does a great job. Of course, he's a great hunter and a great guy, you know, and you know, when I first met him, I said, you know, I know you're a good man because my dear friend Jim Massett thinks the world of you, and that's good enough for me.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, that's good enough for me. And Joe is truly a great guy, and he does a great job. He really does a great job.
Yeah, meeting Jim was awesome. I went to the house he's been living in for years and years and years. Recorded the podcast in his trophy room there, and but he's the most humble person you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
Gives all the credit. Says Joe's a way better hunter than he is. Gives credit to everybody else but himself.
Yeah, he always does. He's like I said, it's impossible not to love Jim Massett.
Yep.
It's impossible. He's just a wonderful man.
Do you have any stories of guys that you've guided, any that stand out above others, maybe that were emotional or that was just like what's the best you've ever felt guiding a hunter?
Well, multiple times. You know, if you take someone who has not done it, you know, like a couple of the guys in the seminar you see were, you know, and when they, like that guy there, when, you know, he was from down here in southern Pennsylvania, you know, we cut that track, it was thick, the snow on the ground, branches, trees covered with snow, you know, and he really was nervous about going in the woods, and I told him, you know, you gotta, you know, we're on a steaming hot track. I says, you know, how bad do you want it? You better get a little fire in your belly. I says, you know, if you do everything I ask you to do, when I ask you to do it, we got a good chance of catching up to this buck and killing him. And, you know, a couple more times throughout that track that day, I had to give him pep talks just to keep him up.
Getting into this really gross looking swamp or super snarly looking. Yeah,
exactly.
He's like, we're going through that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I told him, you better get a little fire in your belly, you know. And but we ended up catching up to it and killing it. And he was so happy he was crying.
Yeah.
You know, and he had shot a lot of deer from a tree stand, you know.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, Maryland, and West Virginia. And, you know, he's hooked now. I mean, he's hooked.
Well, I think like you were saying a little bit, just tracking, the art of tracking and the tradition of it, it taps into our DNA from tens of thousands of years ago.
No doubt.
When you kill a deer like that.
No doubt.
You know? I love bow hunting. I have tracked a little bit here and there when my conditions allow.
Mm-hmm.
Young father too, so trying to get away and go far north for a while is a little tough.
Mm-hmm.
I love bow hunting, but I love hunting every different way that is available out there to get a different experience.
Sure.
But I'm sure I shot one that was sort of tracking, you know, a big 6-pointer, shed his antlers when I shot him. It was late in the season. I tracked him all day, and then the snow, he got to a ridge where I lost the snow. The sun was on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all melted halfway up the ridge, and I was like, oh, well, I just crept up the top of the ridge as slowly as I could and looked down over the other side, and he was bedded there, like 60 yards away. I just waited him out. So I tracked a little bit, but I think you don't get that real feeling of tracking unless you're in giant wilderness. It's going to put you back.
Yep.
10,000 years ago, where you can imagine what life was like.
Yeah, yeah, and it is. There's a lot of truth to that, and there's kind of like a high you get.
Yep.
It's kind of like a high. You get when you're in the middle of a huge piece of woods on a buck track. It's like euphoria. You know what I mean? It's there's nothing like it.
And you can't think about getting lost, and you can't think about anything else, right? It's part of the mindset thing that you
got to
covered.
set your mind. My grandfather used to say that when it comes to tracking and stalking, you got to be relentless. The key word is relentless, and you got to concentrate on the job at hand totally. You can't think about anything else because you'll be distracted and you will not be ready when that buck jumps up in front of you. You just won't.
Your grandfather sounds like he was full of wisdom and a great hunter. What are the does he have 5 keys to success as a hunter?
Yeah, my grandfather's 5 basic principles of being a good deer hunter are number 1 is be familiar with your map and compass so there's no fear of getting lost. Number 2 is learn how to pre-qualify the woods before you ever go into them so you're not hunting in an area where there's no big bucks to begin with. Number 3 is learn how to walk in the woods under all conditions so you can walk up close enough to a deer to get a shot at him and not jump him at 250 to 300 yards and never even hear him, never mind see him. Number 4 is learn how to react to that buck when you jump him, whether he sees you first or not, so you can put yourself in a position to get a shot at him, if not immediately within the next half hour to an hour and a half. And number 5 is learn how to shoot fast and with rapid fire and hit what you aim at. Them are my grandfather's 5 basic principles of being a good deer hunter. And Pat, I heard them so much when I was a kid. I heard them when I was that tall. It was like that's what they talked about,
Well, and number 5, the easy way to do that is just practice, right? You got to practice
Yeah,
shooting.
one of the articles that they wrote about me in Field and Stream several years ago was how to train yourself to shoot a rifle like a shotgun. Never close one eye. Put the end of the barrel on the target and let the lead fly. Ignore the rear sight. Like I said in my seminars, my grandfather, my uncles, a lot of my cousins, they take the rear sights right off their Winchesters, right off, and they concentrate totally on the front sight.
It's probably a lot of instinctual at that point, too.
It is instinctual.
Yeah.
And, I don't use the rear sight. I ignore it completely. I concentrate on the front sight, but that's how they teach you in the military. That's how they teach you in the military. Let the lead fly. And you keep shooting until the animal's on the ground.
And knowing how to react after you jump one. One thing that's just one of those little things, but I think anybody who's getting into tracking and wanting to try it should remember, right, is when you're doing your 2-step, 3-step, crunching, sounding like a deer, you call a stop and level if you're right next to each other.
Yep.
But level isn't the best shooting stance.
No.
So you like to stop with your foot forward.
My right foot forward.
Yep. Your right foot forward. Yep. Are you a lefty or a righty?
I'm a righty.
Yeah.
But if I stop with my right foot forward, I can swing and shoot
swing
this
to your
way.
good side
Right.
much easier.
And if they go this way, all I got to do is step forward with my left and drop to my knee.
Yeah.
So I can cover that way too.
And you drop to your knee periodically on a track too, don't you?
I do.
Especially when you're in the wheelhouse there.
Yep. And especially stalking. Get down to their level. And you're looking for a piece of a deer. You're looking for the white throat patch, the white around their eye, a flicker of an ear or a tail, a horizontal line in the woods, which is their back, a horn, a leg. Don't look for the whole deer. Look for a piece of a deer, and always be ready to shoot fast and with fast follow-up shots. That's just how it is. If you're going to track and stalk, you got to have the ability to shoot fast and with fast follow-up shots. You really do.
Yeah, and I can see why. In the Maine woods where it's all those jack spruces and
Oh yeah,
all that thick stuff, you really you'd have to get lucky to kind of pick up a jump deer in the scope in that real thick stuff.
Yeah, and even in open country, I mean, I've had guys up high, you mentioned Joe Donito, hunting with a bolt action. I know Jimmy hunts with a bolt action scope rifle, and they have tremendous success doing it. But they're as good as they get. You're not going to get any better at their craft than Jim and Joe.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I got the utmost respect for them guys. But you take an average guy who is nowhere near as skilled as they are.
Yep.
Even in open Pennsylvania woods, them picking up a deer running through the woods with a scope and then trying to shoot at it more than once with a bolt action, it's not going to happen to most people. It's just not. And I've seen it time and time and time again. People tell me all the time, well, I can shoot a bolt action fast. And I look at them and say, no, you can't. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but, we've had so many deer hunting out of our place. And also before in my guiding career, not only in Maine, but in Texas and Colorado. I've had so many people miss game because they couldn't find it in the scope. I'm talking elk and moose, too. Couldn't find it in the scope and then couldn't work the bolt action fast enough for the second shot. It's common.
And you use lever, right?
Yep. Everybody in my family for 6 generations.
Do you think, have you found there's much of a difference between the lever and a pump in terms of speed?
No doubt.
Lever's faster than pump.
No doubt.
Yep.
No doubt. And I had some people in that seminar that you sat in on that come to my place who've seen me shoot a lever gun. And not to brag, but can you shoot a pump fast? Absolutely. Is a pump a great gun? Without question. Without question. It's a phenomenal gun. But, we can shoot, of course we've been doing it forever. We've been doing it for 6 generations. We can shoot lever guns really fast. I'll give you a good example. Like when my grandfather emptied his 38-55 or 30-30, I'm not kidding you, and you can ask any of my customers. You can go over to my booth right now and ask them, when my grandfather emptied his gun, it sounded like this. All 5. I'm serious. All 5.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Without question.
That is awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like a burp gun. You know what I mean? But I'm the runt of the litter.
What does yours sound like?
Not as fast. Yeah, not as fast, but pretty fast. But even like the more you do it, of course, the better off you are. Another thing too, my grandfather always said, whatever you hunt deer with, you should have a 22 identical to it, and burn the barrel right out.
That is a great.
Burn the barrel right out of it.
Yeah.
Practice it.
That is
Practice.
An awesome.
Yeah.
Even like airsoft guns, that's becoming pretty big, and people say if you want to get really good at target acquisition and stuff and how to work a gun, get an airsoft gun and just go through repetitions on that, because it's easier to do that. You can do that inside your house, and ammo's not as expensive.
Yeah.
But you can get the same muscle memory building up.
Yeah.
And on that muscle memory topic, did you play baseball?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're probably a first baseman, hit a bunch of home
believe
runs.
it or not, I played left field. You wouldn't know it to look at me now, but I used to have good wheels and I had a good arm.
I bet you still hit home runs too.
I hit my share, not like my son Scott. My son Scott broke his ankle 2 weeks before he was due to report to a closed tryout with the Phillies.
And he was probably a catcher.
He was a shortstop.
No shit.
Yeah. He was a shortstop, but
he's just built like a catcher now.
Oh yeah, well, he was built like a catcher then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's back when he was playing, he was 5'7", 220, no fat.
Wow.
He ran a 4.33 40.
Wow.
Oh yeah. He used to hit 430-foot line drives, opposite field home runs. I mean, he
But as you were saying in the seminar too, like just to get your muscle memory and your repetitions, it's like, you know, going to batting practice, doing a little soft toss drill, you know, how a batter will get ready before the game, or even taking practice swings in the on-deck circle. What do you do? And this is awesome too, just to practice before you go out and hunt.
Anytime I pick up a gun, whether it's a shotgun to go bird hunting, or whether it's a rifle to go deer hunting, or shoot and trap, or you know, whenever I pick up a shotgun or a rifle, the first thing I do is I put the end of the barrel on 25 trees. I step into it just like hitting a baseball. I put the end of the barrel on 25 trees. You're creating muscle memory. It's no different than a baseball player taking his practice swings before he gets into the box. And, you know, if you do that every time you shoot or go hunting, what you're doing is you're building that muscle memory. So when that deer jumps up in front of you, or that bird flies up in front of you, before you even give it a split second thought, you're already got the gun on it, and you're looking at it right down the barrel.
Yep.
And there are so many deer I would have never shot, or birds. You know, grouse and woodcock, and snowshoe hare. There's so many animals that I would have never shot in my lifetime if I didn't do that drill every single time I'm going shooting or hunting.
You've already acquired 25 targets.
Exactly.
You know, and so, yeah, you've got that memory built up.
Exactly.
And a deer is bigger than the trees you're putting it on most of the time, too.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I thought that was awesome, super interesting. I really want to come up to your outfitter at some point. You've given me, like, especially just the way I could tell you'd be an awesome teacher. Your guides that you've hired, I'm sure you're not hiring, you know, guides that don't know exactly how you think think about the woods the way that you do. You know,
I played and coached a lot of football and baseball and hockey, and you know, I've never coached hockey, but I've coached football and baseball. And I look at being an outfitter like being a head football coach.
Mm-hmm.
You get yourself a good offensive and defensive coordinator, good linebacker and defensive ends coach, good special teams, running back coach. And when you surround yourself with good people, they make you look good. So I've never hired a guide that came looking for work. Every guide that I've hired, I go after them. And it's worked out tremendous for us. And if they don't have any knowledge on hunting deer on the ground to begin with, I wouldn't hire them in the first place.
Yep.
You know, it's all about being a good woodsman. But I have tremendous guides working for me. You know, between me and the boys, you know, we got 15, 16 guides. And we do lots of stuff, you know what I mean? But yeah, I go after the guides that I want to hire, and it's worked out great.
Kill a lot of big bear. Well, you do the deer hunts too, but you guys kill a lot of big bear up there too, huh?
We do, yeah. Last year we shot 38 bear in 4 weeks. You know, we shot 4 over 400 pounds. We shot 4 over 300 pounds. But you can't play at it. You know what I mean? You gotta.
It's hard work.
It's hard work. You know, it's hard work. But we start in the woods. In the beginning of July. You know, and we're working on preparing and getting the bear bait sites ready. But we're also scouting for deer and moose, bird covers, rabbit covers. We're constantly scouting. Any day in the woods is a good day, and you got to utilize that time. So, like, say I'm driving down the road, and I see a doe across the road. I don't care what time of year it is. I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna tie a piece of flagging tape. I'm gonna tie a piece of flagging tape on a tree branch, and then I'm gonna go. And I'm going to see why that deer crossed there. You know, I'm going to go where it came from first, and then I'm going to go which way it's going.
Yeah.
I tracked a doe backwards one time that took me to one lone oak tree in the middle of the woods that was beaten down with deer tracks and deer sign.
There's not very many oaks in Maine.
No.
In northern Maine.
No.
Yeah. So that's great intel.
So yeah. So that's you gotta, we are always scouting every time we're in the woods, and everything's marked down. I keep detailed records because that's my job, and my goal has always been to hand the keys down to my son.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
Now, does he use any technology like a GPS or the apps now where you can mark the waypoints and stuff? Like, is there a little bit of a, you're like, nah, you could do it all on a topo map. He's like, I got a topo map in my phone. Is there any of that going on, or is he just marking it down in his memory as well?
He has a GPS, and he actually bought me one. I don't use it, but he said, Dad, I want you to carry it because if you get hurt or something's going on, and I need to get to you to help you, I want to be able to get to you. And his heart's in the right place, but that's one more thing to carry I don't need. You know what I mean? I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
No, I just never have been. I'll stick with the compass.
Does anybody shed hunt up there? Do you guys find sheds around? Like, are you just not in the woods around that time? Or?
We find sheds, but we stumble on them when we're working in the woods and stuff.
Yeah.
But I do have a friend up there who shed hunts, a couple friends, and they do very well.
Yep. Moose antlers. And,
deer antlers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of guys in Maine and the Northwoods can go to they'll be in the yards is a great place to check for sheds. But
No
up
doubt.
there, you're saying they kind of yard up in their own cedar swamps and stuff, right?
Yeah, there's yards everywhere. In eastern Maine, Grand Lake Stream, all the way up to, south of Holton. Eastern Maine, in the further north you go towards Holton, there's less cedar swamps, but there are cedar swamps, and the deer live where they are year round.
Yeah.
They live where they are year round.
Yep. That's a little bit of a different thing. Is I do a lot of my scouting while shed hunting, and shed hunting it's really fun.
Oh yeah.
Really fun to do, but I don't think up there you can learn as much from them shed hunting. Maybe you can if they're living where they are. No, maybe
Yeah.
Maybe if you come across a big old whitetail and shed, and this is where he lives.
There's a family of trackers and stalkers from Pennsylvania. Their name is Wambacker.
Wambackers.
And they're really, really, really good woodsmen and really, really good hunters. And what they do is they shed hunt, and they go after the deer that they find their sheds.
Yep.
They go after them deer.
Yep.
And they shoot big bucks all the time.
Yeah.
And in Pennsylvania, where most people are hunting with squirrel rifles, they're hunting with flat shooting light caliber bullets, they hunt with, Donnie Wambacker Sr. hunted with a Model 71 and 348, and the other boys hunted with 358s and 375s, and they shoot a lot of deer, but they literally go after the deer who drop the sheds, and they're really good at it.
Yeah, my business partner Pat, he found sheds from the same buck for 6 years in a row, and then finally killed it, and he was 11 and a half years old when he killed it.
He showed me the picture of the
It's
buck.
pretty crazy.
Beautiful deer. Beautiful deer.
Yeah, you can do that in smaller woods or in suburbs and stuff, but I think it's harder to target one specific buck in in the north.
No doubt. Not only that, I have a 10-pointer on the wall that field dressed at 234, and I call him my consolation prize buck because I was after a much bigger buck, and that buck I was tracking literally hooked around this buck and ran him right out to me. And it was a little after 3 in the afternoon. He was a good buck, so I took him.
Yeah. He was the subdominant buck in there.
Yeah.
That's
And he's a beautiful deer. I got him on the wall, but that's just how it is.
You guys do any fishing out of your camp up there?
Oh yeah, we fish a dozen.
Is it on a lake?
Yeah, we have a mile of lake frontage, and we fish a dozen lakes, 5 rivers, about 30 trout brooks besides the lake we live on. And the lake we live on has smallmouth, big smallmouth, and chain pickerel and white and yellow perch.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Ice fishing up there too?
I'm gone all winter doing seminars, so I like to ice fish, but I don't do it anymore.
Is the outfitter open year round or just during?
We're planning on opening it year round again. We haven't for quite a few years because I've been working for Field and Stream, and the NRA for all winter for years now, and so I'm gone all winter, so I don't get a chance to do that. But it's all right. It's all good.
Well, if you guys watching this, you want to book a hunt, Wilderness Escape Outfitters, Maine, Randy Flannery. You can't get much better than a guide and just a really, really good guy. I'm super happy I met you a couple years ago, and we've only talked a few times, but
Yep. The pleasure's mine. Believe me. I appreciate what you're doing. I really do. Huntstock it sounds like a great time, and if there's any way possible I can make it sometime, I will.
Yeah, absolutely. And if not, I'll see you up in northern Maine, because my partner and I will go up there, and even if anything, we'll help you with some bear baiting and go and look for some sheds a little bit too.
Absolutely,
we like doing that.
Sounds like a plan. I'll put you to work.
Awesome, I'll do it. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
This show is brought to you by Huntstock, America's reinvented hunting show. Tickets and info at www.huntstockevents.com.